So libertarian bitch was getting on my nerves, talking about how this public school did something to expel one of the students, and she was all but hurt, but then in the same paragraph said that if it had been a private school, I wouldn't have minded. Implying that just because something is privatized gives you the reason to erode on somebody's civil liberties, especially the right to an education, which in turn infringes upon their opportunities, their growth in life, their experiences, their social networking, everything. Everything we do affects someone's life, either for good or for bad, and if we're affecting people's lives in bad ways, why are we allowing it to happen? We cannot be everywhere at once. We're not omnipresent, and we cannot stop bad things from happening. But certainly we can stop some bad things from happening, correct? And it pisses me off because it comes down to the right wing really believes that just because the magical concept of private ownership allows you to hurt other people. That's what it comes down to. They believe you have the right to be evil, and you have the right to do evil things so long as you own something. But how can you own something unless you have the force of government to validate your ownership? You see where the circular logic comes in? They hate government, and yet they need government in order to establish ownership so that they can govern others. That's the difference between left-wing and right-wing ideology. Now, mind you, I'm not going to go into detail about the utter hypocrisy of it. You already know that. What I want to go into detail is how the right wing does not understand how much patience we on the left have and how much we deal with on a daily basis. The very fact that we're not burning down buildings and shooting people in the face is akin to our infinite love and reservoir of compassion that, we cooperate with society in a civil manner. There are two reasons why people cooperate with society, despite all its flaws, despite all its oppression, despite everything. Number one is because they're afraid of the law, and number two is because they want there to be law. Some people are just too afraid of the law to take action. This is why mundane crimes are not committed. The reason why people don't smoke pot isn't because they think pot is bad, isn't because they think pot should be considered bad. It's because they know someone else considers pot bad and is willing to enforce that law upon them, and they're too scared to do it. They figure it's not worth it. And then there are people that authentically think something like pot is bad and want to enforce that, and will do what they can to enforce that. So the reason why we all cooperate with society is either because we authentically believe society should be cooperative and we should all relatively get along, or because we're too afraid not to get along. It's the path of least resistance. It comes down to something has to be cheaper than not doing something. In other words, if you make things more aggravating, more expensive, more infuriating, more tiresome to do, they won't do it. It's just that simple. The concepts of that our military is superior because we have better firepower, because we have huge numbers, because we're smarter, is all just a ruse. I mean, those play a portion of it, but it comes down to it's just more expensive to fight us than to submit to us. It's just that simple. That's how life works. If something is too expensive, you won't fight it. It expends more energy than you get out of it. If it costs more energy to find food than to eat food, then you're not going to go after food. If it costs more money to get a house than the house is worth, you're not going to buy it. It's just simple mathematics. And that's why people don't usually commit crimes, or at least try not to, because they figure it's just too expensive. And that is an objective truth. However, we have used this theory and twisted it to make things that shouldn't be more expensive, more expensive. We have made it to where people cannot even think for themselves without expending more energy than they get out of it. The fact is, I have to resist getting banned every step of the way. I have to resist getting censored and getting trashed upon, getting treated like garbage. For what? What the fuck am I doing? I'm just talking. That's all I'm doing. I'm just communicating with other people. If you don't like what I say, you don't have to like what I say. No one is forcing you to listen to me, but the fact that they're forcing me to not be able to speak and not be able to listen to other people is an attack. It is an authentic bullying. It's thuggery. And it's okay because apparently capital ownership entitles them to that. So then, I have to come to the logical conclusion, what costs more energy? Does it cost more energy to resist capital ownership? Does it cost more energy to resist moderators? Or does it cost more energy to, just lie there and wallow in self-pity and let people walk all over me? What does that accomplish, though? For me, it's not a choice. Because, everyone likes to think that I'm just some crazy asshole that talks out of my ass and, is some anti-authority anarchist stereotype and wants no authority whatsoever, man. Burn down the White House, man. No, that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is rationality. And it's irrational to expect me to speak in a manner that you approve of and ascribe to your standards when you don't even know what those standards are. A forum has no obligation to uphold anyone's standards, not even their own. They can change at a whim because they own the property. That's what it comes down to. Owning property allows you to be completely devoid of any morality, any accountability. You just enforce the rules however you see fit. How do rules have any meaning if they have no solid foundation? How can you expect people to follow rules that change on your whim? Those are not rules. That is just pure force. That is like pointing a fucking gun to your head and telling you to do this, do that, do the other, even if they contradict one another, or else you're gonna get shot. That's it. That's all it is. It's just pure violence. How can you expect me to ascribe to a system that relies on pure violence? I'm not going to do it. There is no amount of expending of energy that can amount to accepting that pure violence, because I'm going to be jumping through hoops for the rest of my fucking life to try to appease some moderator douchebag. For what? So I can post at his fucking forum? It's not worth it. I would rather live my life fighting them. I would rather live my life typing up emails about how I would put a fucking gun in their mouth and kidnap their kids. I would rather spend my time trying to pass laws that come down against forums doing that. I would rather spend my time trying to convince governors and senators to put taxes on large websites that do the most bannings. I would rather spend my time talking to you, the YouTube viewer, all 200 of you, rather than trying to appease some fucking psychopath that thinks it's okay to ban me just because he can. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to physics. It comes down to the law of thermodynamics. And there is nothing on this earth to suggest that, capital ownership somehow, without any kind of explanation, allows people to do stuff that they normally would not be allowed to do. It just makes no sense at all. And this is something that has grown, it has evolved into a new reactionary evil. I believe communism is a social science. It is a social theory, and we have had to deal with conservatives in many different regards. But the emperors of old at least made some sense. Emperors of old were appointed by a council, or they were democratically elected, or they at least conquered and slaughtered their way to the top. We do not have tribesmen killing us to get their way. We do not have chancellors appointed by other monarchs to get their way. We do not have such charismatic individuals that the entire community serves them and sucks their dick to get their way. What we have is people that think that they can do what they want because they own property, and everyone else just agrees with it, because they imagine in their heads that at some point they're going to own property too and be able to abuse people all the same. It's a combination of the nature of man to want to worship something outside of himself because he's too weak-willed to have his own independent thoughts, and he needs a pharaoh. He needs some kind of man-like figure that acts as a god to make his life feel like it has some kind of meaning, and at the same time it appeals to their violent nature to want to hurt other people and want to get away with it. And normally he can't get away with it, but if under this magical concept of property he can get away with it, it's something to aspire to. People are aspiring to evil. That is it. Capitalism has just become a sophisticated way to combine the evils of old, before we had the industrial age, and has just turned mankind into a more evil presence upon the world. And that's what it comes down to. Am I saying that we should go back to the ways of old, of kingdoms and tribes and things like that? No, I don't. I would think that would be the worst thing you could do, because then it would just revert back to capitalism eventually. We have to evolve beyond capitalism, and hopefully in a positive direction and not an even more negative one, because the same way capitalism has evolved the way it does, it's only a matter of time before we get into an Orwellian state where we are a globalist system, but a globalist authoritarian system, where Big Brother has the authority to fuck us over just because. You know, isn't it ironic that libertarians are so worried about a digitized monetary system, where basically there is a computer chip in their hand or whatever that is like a debit card, and at any time the government can just shut down your account. You cannot buy, you cannot trade, you cannot sell. You are not a citizen. You do not exist because someone with a button decides that, boop, your account, it's gone. Everything you ever worked for is gone. How is that any different than a forum moderator? It's the same principle. Perhaps the forum moderator cannot affect your life in such a high regard, but let's face it, Facebook has done that to me to some extent. By banning my Facebook, I cannot get in on coupons, I cannot social network with other people, which Facebook is the largest social network on the market today. You know, I lost contact with friends and family. You know, it's just insulting, and it's degrading. So, yeah, Facebook is not quite the mark of the beast, but it's a pretty close resemblance. It is a primitive version. It is the prototype of the mark of the beast. And I've had to experience it, and nobody gives a fuck, because my property, my dick. But then when it affects them, all of a sudden we got a problem. All of a sudden we have an Orwellian state, when, you know, it's them that has to worry about that. You know, you should have been nipping this at the bud before Facebook was doing this shit. And, you know, and then you're going to be worried. Then you act like you're going to care when it all comes to pass. No, you're not. You're going to defend it all the same as you do now. You defended it now, you're going to defend it then, when it costs even more energy to fight against, when it becomes even more detrimental to your health, and it becomes even harder to stop it. You're going to submit to it even more, because logically, you're going to realize how futile it is to stop Big Brother, and if not, you're still going to be conditioned to love Big Brother. That's why 1984 was written the way it was. The end of the book was not simply, you know, bad shit happens and people are self-aware of it. What happened was people loved Big Brother. They loved the control. They were raised to love the control, and it was beaten out of them any side of, you know, dissent. So that's what made it scary. Not the fact simply that they were being controlled. Our whole lives revolve around control. Someone is always trying to control us. But the difference is we always have hope that we can find means of expending less energy than we receive from the opportunity. But in 1984, that's an impossibility. So that's what makes that a frightening, futuristic world. And it's a futuristic world we will have to live with. Maybe not us per se, but our kids or our grandkids. And I would actually probably say us. I would say in this generation we will live in an Orwellian state. And it will be a privatized corporate state where corporations own everything and they feel entitled to doing what they do, and you will defend them because it's their property. And if you don't like it, just make your own bank. Just own your own country, you know, and stupid shit like that. You make those stupid excuses now. What's to stop you from making them then, when things get worse? You know? What, you think it's only them that gets worse? No, it's your own stupidity and vileness that gets worse. You are part of the system. It is a social dynamic. And that's what right-wingers fail to understand, is that we don't exist in a vacuum. We can't simply make our own way. We cannot simply, you know, compete and make our own forum. It doesn't work that way. The principle of the matter is that people can do that to you, and there is no retribution. There is no accountability. There is no limitations. They just can hurt you and hurt you and hurt you, and you're supposed to deal with it. You know? That's what it comes down to. And when you realize that, there is no amount of energy expenditure that will scare you into stopping you. Because there is no other option. What is the other option? Death? Enslavement? abuse. If you ask me, that costs way more energy. All in an effort to try to appease my master and try to get my master to not whip me quite as hard. You know, that's the most irrational way to live your life ever. That's not how we were raised evolutionary. That was not how we were raised civilly. Our parents did not teach us to be docile little fucktards that just take bullies' attacks as they come. And nature did not evolve us to be that way either. We have chosen to be that way because through dormant genes in our system, we have evil ambitions, we have evil urges that we have not grown out of. We have not learned to fight them. We have let them lay there and grow, and they have gotten worse, and they have controlled our entire being. I have no doubt in my mind that through our evolutionary cycle, evil serves some kind of purpose. But it has become a cancer. It has mutated into something else entirely, and now we are all suffering for it. I'm a big believer in social Darwinism and evolution, and it is in that regard why I am very much opposed to authority and very much opposed to private property, because I know what that leads to. I know what sort of genetic material that caters to, and that's what makes it scary. Not so much, you know, chaos and destruction and ooh, scary. No, it's not scary that the world will die in flames or a big explosion or in chaos in the streets and people trampling all over each other. No, the scary thing is the world remaining in stagnation. The world orbiting around, just everyone controlled, hobbling around until someone puts a fucking gun in the back of their head and blows their brains out, but nobody cares, no one even looks at that guy, and they just hobble around doing their enslavement until something on the outside kills us all. We will die with a whimper. We will not die in a bang. I guarantee you that if we keep going the way we're going, and more people refuse to stand up to what is right and what is wrong. So, that's all I have to say for now.